California, we have a budget deal in place between the legislature and Gavin Newsom. They have gone back and forth about what they're going to spend their money on. It has gone up basically about 10% from last year, even though we're somehow facing a $12 billion budget deficit. I guess they plan on spending their way out of all of this problems, but we're going to get into who really benefits from this budget. And I'm going to, a little spoiler alert, it's not everyday Californian, so let's hop into it right now.
That's right. Alex, lawmakers in the Senate and the Assembly were hashing out the finer points of all of these bills today as they voted on them, what they liked, what they opposed. One thing then both chambers that members on both sides of the aisle brought up was funding for Prop 36. Passed by more than 2/3 of voters in November, Prop 36 allows harsher sentencing and mandated treatment for certain theft and drug crimes. Democrats put $100 million into the budget to fund it, which Republicans argue is not enough.
The voters voted to have Prop 36, but what good is it if you're not going to fund it? And not only are you not really funding it, we even reduced what the funding was to begin with. I had an amendment to fully fund this with $400 million, but obviously that wasn't heard and didn't go forward.
The administration this year said they expected the cases only to be about 3,600 cases. So what have we allocated? We have taken hard-earned money and we've allocated $100 million. And I assure you that as those cases increase, which I suspect that we will, we'll have to make additional adjustments.
Also in the budget, maintaining that controversial expanded Medi-Cal coverage to include low-income undocumented adults, albeit now with some new restrictions like a $30 monthly premium and freezing new enrollment for full scope coverage after this year.
And of course, that means we're going to dip into our rainy day fund more and borrow some additional dollars.
I spoke with Chris McCaley. He's an adjunct professor at McGeorge School of Law and expert on the operations of the state legislature. He says there are a handful of final budget-related bills that still need to be passed on Monday, so the legislature will convene again then. One of them involves CEQA reform, the California Environmental Quality Act. Proponents say it's an important tool for protecting species, habitats, and people in the face of land development. Critics say yes, but it can also be used to tie up projects in years-long bureaucracy, stalling and even killing development, including much-needed housing. Newsom has vowed to bring reforms, and one of the bills Monday aims to do just that. So important that McCaley says the bill includes a provision he hasn't seen in more than 20 years at the Capitol.
That says if that bill, the CEQA reform bill, is not adopted, signed by the governor, the whole budget goes away. It's automatically repealed. I think that goes to show the public that the governor and legislature are very serious about significant CEQA reform in an effort to expedite the building of more affordable homes here in the state of California.
He says even though the budget closes that projected $12 billion gap, there is still financial uncertainty here in California. He says the Trump administration has threatened to revoke or cut off federal funding to California for everything from Medicare or Medicaid, which funds Medi-Cal here in the state, to high-speed rail and even education dollars. So whether those cuts come through and how severe they might be, we have yet to.
All right, so a lot to unpack there in the budget that has tentatively been agreed upon. Like I said, the governor came in, he proposed his budget. He wanted to pause Medi-Cal funding for illegal immigrants. The legislature, full of, far left statist Democrats, decided that that was unacceptable, that they had to include Medi-Cal. They came to a compromise that they would keep it in, but they would charge a $30 premium because that is going to, I guess, somehow cover the cost of Medi-Cal for all legal immigrants in the state. And I just want to do the math here. Now, again, I didn't become a lawyer because I'm great at math. I just want to break this down for you. According to Pew Research, and this is the research I found, there are about 2.6 illegal immigrants in the state of California. This was a couple years ago. And right now, it costs around $700 to $800 million a month to provide Medi-Cal for all legal immigrants a month. So keep that in mind. So if you charge them $34 or $30 a month, that comes out to around $78 million that Medi-Cal is taking in, while they're also paying out around $700 or $800 million. So they're only $622 million off. It's only that big of a discrepancy. So they came so close to covering that gap by $30. It's almost kind of insulting that they think the $30 is going to make a big difference for Medi-Cal. Keep in mind that money, Medicaid from the federal government, from the Trump administration, going to be probably a tough fight, because I don't think that President Trump, the way he's going with mass deportations and his stance on legal immigration, is going to be handing out a lot of federal dollars if he knows a lot of it, and almost $1 billion is going to illegal immigrants in California every month. Prop 36, we've talked about Prop 36 before. Incredibly popular proposition, a proposition that passed in the state of California by every single county. Every county voted for Prop 36. That is like historic in California politics, to get every single county in California to agree on one thing is probably the hardest thing in the world to do. So it happened, and it passed 70% approval to 30% disapproval. And for some reason, for the people in Sacramento who crow about democracy and the power of the people and the power of the vote and all that stuff, people like Gavin Newsom in the state legislature here in California seem to not really be behind the idea of democracy when it doesn't work for them. So there's been this issue of Prop 36 is not properly being funded. They expected it to be around $400 million a year that they had to fund Prop 36. And this was something, again, the people voted on overwhelmingly, contrasted with the fact that 58% of Californians in a Public Policy Institute of California survey said that they did not support and were opposed to free Medi-Cal for illegal immigrants here in the state of California. Compare that with Prop 36, which was wildly popular. They don't want to fund Prop 36, but they will fund free Medi-Cal for illegal immigrants in the state. Just gives you an idea of the priorities here in the state of California and your legislators and your governor and what they really think of Californians and everyday Californians, because what you vote on doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's all, I guess, just a show for them to make it sound like democracy is a great idea. And then when they don't like it, they don't implement it. So that's those two big controversial issues. They did at least get $100 million. It's better than nothing. Gavin's initial budget, Old Noodles, his first budget was no money. We all know he hated Prop 36. He campaigned against it. He tried to pass a whole bunch of poison pills to kill Prop 36. He tried to do other measures for Prop 36. He tried to do all these press conferences showing him signing all these laws, saying we don't need Prop 36. He hates Prop 36. So it's an affront to his ego and his grasp on power when the people of California vote overwhelmingly against what he wants. So it was almost, I guess, for a lack of a better term, a big middle finger to the people of California when Gavin Newsom goes, here's my budget. It has no money for the one proposition that everybody supported, or mostly 70% of California voters supported. That just gives you an idea. There was this other thing that I want to get into. Gavin, again, with his power struggle, wanted to include a poison pill. And if you don't know what a poison pill is, what they call a poison pill in legislative government like this, when they're drafting bills and stuff like that, is that they will include a poison pill into some sort of bill, or in this case, the budget, where they say, if X happens, then this budget or this bill dies and goes away. The reason for that is it's like a negotiating tactic, with everybody who says, look, you either vote with me and you support this idea or it's going to go away. And basically he had this whole housing reform package where he said, you either support my housing reform package for CEQA and building housing, or there is this poison pill provision that the whole budget will go away and we have to start from scratch. Let's take a quick look at what he has to say about his poison pill.
Consequence of all of that, we have too much demand chasing too little supply. It's not complicated. This is Econ 101, supply-demand imbalance. I've said it before, I'll repeat it. This issue of housing explains more things in more ways on more days than any other issue to explain the challenges and the plight of so many Californians. So many of the challenges that ail us can be connected back to this issue. Unless we address this issue head on, we'll continue to be vexed by so many of these challenges as it relates to the challenges of the middle class and working folks, the issues of what's happening on our streets and sidewalks. All of these things are foundationally and fundamentally connected.
So there's a spiel about affordable housing. They have talked about affordable housing. Scott Wiener is standing there. He's talked about affordable housing. Alex Lee, the infamous assembly member who is about 23, 24 years old. I don't know if he's super young, but I think he still lives in his mom's basement. Again, I don't know. Don't sue me for defamation. It's just a statement. They've all been talking about affordable housing for years and years and years. They don't seem to figure out the number one way to fix it when it comes to housing in California. In fact, when it comes to housing, basically anywhere in the country, let's just say, actually, when it comes to housing, basically, I'm going to say this, in the world, the number one thing government can do to help with affordable housing is they can get the hell out of the way. That's what government has to do. They just have to get out of the way and just stop with the regulation. CEQA is part of this. CEQA is an abomination. They need to scrap CEQA and start from scratch on CEQA. They have to admit defeat on CEQA. It's been abused. It has been overused. People use it now to hold a lot of cities and governments hostage, because what will happen is they want to build something or they want to start something. Then all of a sudden someone comes in, files a CEQA lawsuit. It's kind of a way to hold your project hostage and say, look, you either fight this out with me for the next 10 years, or you can just do what we want you to do. CEQA is an absolute abomination. So when it comes to affordable housing, the number one thing that I always say is that government has to get the hell out of the way. And Democrats in Sacramento, including Gavin Newsom, Scott Wiener, Alex Lee, all people like that, they don't understand that. They can't fathom the idea that government getting out of the way. They think government can solve everything. And so that was his poison pill. It did pass. It did get through. So his tactic did work. But I will say this, and this is something that I think is rightfully brought up about what Gavin Newsom did. It sets a precedent for governors going forward, and this is a very dangerous precedent, right? What he's saying is governors going forward can say, look, I want this one piece of legislation added into the budget, or the whole budget is going to go away. That is hostile negotiating. That is holding the budget and the state hostage to get what you want. And it is a very bad precedent. And I think it's worth calling out Gavin Newsom for setting this precedent of doing this. And I think it's a dirty trick that he did by doing this. But again, it's Gavin Newsom. I'm not surprised that he did pull such a dirty trick. But forget the fact that they ignored the will of millions of Californians who voted for Prop 36 and they're not funding that. Forget that 58% of Californians oppose giving free Medi-Cal or cover free health care to illegal immigrants. Those are two things California support, and then one thing that they don't support. Forget what everyday Californians want. There's another group that benefits from this budget bill, and I'm just going to say it's not people like you and me. It's not the everyday people who are going to work. It's not everybody. It's not the everyday Californians. I'll give you one guess of who it is. It's not, okay, we already checked off illegal immigrants. They don't want to listen to you about crime and public safety. That's right. It's Hollywood. Hollywood is getting a huge $750 million infusion to the film and tax break. They're getting a huge tax break because if you don't know by now, they are getting absolutely demolished by places like Georgia. Georgia, we covered this in a previous episode, where there is an uncapped amount of tax credits you can get in Georgia when you film there. Uncapped. And that's forever. That's uncapped forever. There is no limit on what you can do for exemptions. They basically open up the gates for the film industry to come out and film in Georgia. Bring your production companies, bring your crews out there. You are going to make a lot more money. It's going to be a lot more affordable to film in Georgia. California obviously has been lagging behind all of this. And they know that they're losing a ton of money because it's California, it's Hollywood. What else goes together? It's like peanut butter and jelly. Everyone thinks of California. They think we all live in Hollywood and we all live on the beach. So they gave this enormous tax break to California. Basically, it says the bill realized Newsom's ambitions. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. The bill realized Newsom's ambitions to increase the cap on California's film and television tax incentives from $330 million to $750 million a year, making the state the most generous outside of New York and Georgia. Like I just talked about, both their programs are uncapped, meaning, let's break it down a little bit. So it was $330 million. So you could get tax incentives up to that amount, $330 million. Now they've basically more than at least doubled it, because they want more people to be able to come here or work here and do their production companies here. New York and Georgia are uncapped, so you can just keep getting those tax incentives as much as you want. California, of course, has to put a limit on it. They can't let you get away with everything. They still need their pound of flesh. Though Newsom's proposal, first announced in the fall of 2024, was initially met with skepticism, it grew in popularity, with the state assembly voting for the increase 64-1 and the Senate voting 31-3. Article goes on to talk about how this could help different production companies. If passed, the legislation would bring the most significant changes to the program since its inception in 2009. The state has steadily been losing production as other regions beef up their incentive programs for the entertainment industry. One example, earlier this month, Texas passed a law that increases by $100 million the amount allocated to movies and TV shows every 2 years. Now, I want to get this last quote in because I know there's some people who hit me up on social media, on Instagram, about this. I posted about this, and some people were like, oh, this is a good idea. This is a great thing. I'm going to explain why I don't think it's a great, I mean, there's probably some benefit, but let's get into this quote. It says, quote, the program not only pays for itself, but generates economic activity. D.D. Myers, senior advisor to Newsom, shocker, at the UCLA Entertainment Symposium on Friday, it's a good deal for taxpayers. It's a good deal for taxpayers, right? It's a great deal for taxpayers that they are going to be able to get, or that Hollywood is going to be able to get these enormous tax incentives. Isn't that great that everybody in Hollywood is going to get a nice tax incentive, and the rest of us in California are facing higher gas prices because of the gas excise, because of the lower carbon fuel standard. Taxes continue to go up, property taxes. I mean, it just continues and continues. City taxes continue to go up. Cities are broke, so they're figuring out how to charge you more for your public amenities and stuff like that. Wouldn't a great incentive to California in general? Why don't we just increase tax incentives for everybody in California, right? Why don't we just say, hey, California, we want to unleash the power of the people. We want to get this economic engine humming. Let's just give tax incentives to a ton of people, everybody in California. No, I disagree with old D.D. Myers' quote where she says it's a good deal for taxpayers, because that now has to be made up somewhere else in the budget. And let me tell you something. California does not like to reduce its spending, as we've seen with this current budget. They increased spending by about 10%, even though they were facing a $12 billion budget deficit, which they had to borrow from the rainy day fund. They had to borrow from themselves to fix the holes in California budget. That's what these games that they're up to. So this is, they say it's a good deal for taxpayers. Taxpayers like you and me, I don't know if it's a good deal for us. What do we get out of it? What does it matter to me if the movie that I'm watching, and the movies that I don't really even go see movies that much anymore. The industry is really suffering right now. what difference does it to me if it's in California or in Georgia, right? Like, it doesn't really matter to me. I know there's people in LA, and if you watch, and if you're somebody out there and you're watching this and you're in the industry, this is amazing for you. This is all great. But my point is, why is it you carve out just for the Hollywood elites? Why is it you carve out just for the Hollywood elites and your buddies in Hollywood, and you're not giving tax incentives to normal, everyday Californians? That's my big question. It's not a great deal for taxpayers. We're still on the hook for all of this. We still have to probably make up all that money. So when they're not making as much taxes from Hollywood, right, because they've increased the incentives and all the stuff that they can write off, someone has to make that up. And it's going to be you and me. And they're going to figure out a way to make it up, because they did not cave on free healthcare for illegal immigrants. So that's something we're still paying for. Now they're giving huge tax incentives to Hollywood, which we're going to end up having to pay for. And they don't actually implement the stuff and put our tax dollars towards something that we all overwhelmingly supported. So to summarize, to give you an idea of the California budget that has just basically been passed by both the legislature and is going to be signed in by Gavin Newsom, there are the three people. Let's see. No, actually, the priorities, I would say, are illegal immigrants are getting free healthcare. Hollywood is getting enormous tax breaks. And the stuff that we want, public safety, is not going to be funded, because screw you. We don't like what you're doing. And, you know, I guess democracy only matters when it's something that you want. All right. All right, let's get into some comments before we get into our next story. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. There are a ton of people on here. This is awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this Tuesday night. So I'm going to get into some of the comments. Someone said they're out in Palm Springs. That's awesome. So what up, Palm Springs? Went to Palm Springs recently, actually a year or so ago. First time. Really like Palm Springs. There's a lot to do out in Palm Springs. Somebody says he can clean the streets. I'm assuming he's talking about Gavin Newsom. In San Francisco, when his boss from China visits, the minimum wage failures continue after seeing the damage fast food did. This foolish admin does it worse for hospitality. Let's see. Good old use of the poison pill. Yep. How do you build more houses without power? Excellent question. That doesn't address the fact that it's very expensive to do anything here in California. Gavin doesn't want to fund Prop 36 because it'll show his incompetence in early release programs and closing prisons during his administration. Brett, you are 100% correct. This is my golden rule of politics. It applies to everybody, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everybody, is that politicians hate admitting they are wrong, right? They hate admitting they are wrong, and they will never, ever admit that they were wrong. So Prop 36 was a repudiation of Prop 47, which they got horribly wrong, and they do not want to admit that they were wrong. Slimeball Newsom is just trying to scam and steal more money. Government needs to get out of the way of everything. Agreed. More taxes we got to pay for these losers who don't want to work. Isn't it illegal for states to not pass an annual budget? Newsom trying to create leverage by saying he won't pass a budget unless it's that. Yeah, constitutionally there is a deadline. I think it's July 7th is when they have to get a budget done. So that's sort of, it's July 1st. So I guess they figured there was a week, and he's kind of holding everybody hostage with that week. So he knows the deadlines. He knows exactly that there's deadlines, and he played it that way so that he could hold us